everybody. This is a bit unusual, it's a bit off the cuff, but I'm here with my very good friend Karleen from Australia, and we're here in the presence of Patricia, also from Australia, who's in Australia at the moment. Karleen and I are in the UK. It just seemed to be a really good opportunity to talk about fighting governments, because both Karleen and Patricia have done this in the past with some degree of success regarding home education. So before we gird our loins, so to speak, for the next big fight, which is definitely coming in the autumn, folks, I thought it'd be a really good idea to listen to these ladies' stories and see what happened in their cases. Karleen, where are you from?
Well, I'm from New South Wales in Australia, so a little bit north of Sydney.
Okay, and Patricia?
I'm in Queensland, further north.
Right. So let's start with Karleen, because yours came first. You had an attack on home education, or a political readjustment, I suppose we could say.
Well, it was bureaucratic, and we're talking 10 years ago now, so it's actually quite a while ago. But we hadn't had any legislative change, we hadn't had any formal policy change, but what we did see was change in practice, and it was having a really negative impact. We've got a registration process for home educators in New South Wales, and they had made it so that they were requiring people to use their the curriculum, the state curriculum, in a way that they hadn't had to before. They were wanting people to understand really the edgy speak of these documents and to apply that with their children. And it was not working. People were getting applications rejected, getting very short registrations. And of course, whenever that kind of thing happens, it's the people who are least able, the people who are most vulnerable in the most difficult circumstances, are the ones who are just not able to manage it.
So just to say something, we're not focusing on whether we've got registration or not. What we're focusing on today is where changes have been made, or changes are appear to have been made, or changes are proposed, where the status quo would change, and home educators have had to fight back. So don't focus on the fact that there is registration at this point. Focus on the fact that there was going to be change, and it was going to be negative.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right. There had been change. Nobody had known that it was coming. We could see it in practice and see that it was having a really negative impact. Yeah. So that's where we're at. And a group of home educators in New South Wales, first of all, decided we need to help people who are really struggling. So actually help them through the registration process so that they didn't have a bad outcome. And secondly, fight against it. And so that's what we did.
Okay. So Patricia, yours is way more recent. What happened with you?
Yeah, I just want to first clarify, Karleen, was yours policy or legislative?
Neither.
Okay.
So it was practice. So there'd been no legislative change, no formal change in policy, but they were actually changing what they were doing.
Yep. Yeah. So we had proposed changes coming back about 2 years ago, and that's when they just started looking at the bill and making changes to the bill. But it sat on the Education Minister's desk for a number of years. I think the only reason it got put forth this year was because we had an Education Minister change, a shuffle. So they had a new one come in, and we actually don't believe that she was fully aware of what was contained in this bill, and that's why she put it forth. And she didn't actually know the scope of it and how it would affect us. So once that got put through and we got wind of that, we just pounced, because we knew that there was nothing in there other than the one thing that I got added late last year during drafting. Everything else we knew would not work, and it would drive more people underground.
And
so
the meat of this bill was actually to force everybody to follow the curriculum within Queensland. Is that correct?
To a degree, there are reasons behind it. So what actually happened was, because we've got elections coming up and there's federal funding for schools, for states as well, for schooling systems. So the state provides a certain amount of funding and then the federal provides the rest, and they have a gap on each. So what was happening was the state has requirements that they have to meet in schools to access this funding and receive the funding from federal. So they just kind of threw us under the bus. So it took us pointing out that we are not eligible for the funding. We do not fall under the brackets of that funding. So therefore, our data does not count. And that's how we managed to get it off the table.
Okay,
That's
so you discovered that they had um drafted the legislation in such a way that it included a group of people that should never have been included, because that was neither the intention of the bill, and neither really does it seem to have been legal in that respect. It's a bit dodgy to say that your cohort should have been included in that legislation. So moving away from the what, let's have a look at the how. So how did both of you fight these things? Because these are big machines. Government is big machine. The people who are looking at your education, the people who are changing the practice, in your case, Karleen, these are big people with lots of power. So what did you do to firstly identify the problem to the general population so that they could support you, and then how did you mobilize them and figure out what techniques you were going to use? Going to start with you. Sorry, big question.
Well, I mean, this kind of thing is something that you can't do on your own. Like, you do have to be connected with other people. You have to, as I say, make everybody aware. We use social media quite a lot, just to let people know about what was happening, sharing people's stories. So not in a way that would necessarily identify them, but share them in a way so that people understood what was actually happening. Because we did have to, I don't know what you found, Patricia, but we certainly found in New South Wales, so people were like, well, I don't have a problem, so you shouldn't have a problem either.
Yeah.
And so it was actually helping people to understand, no, there are people who are having problems who should not be having problems. We need to actually help them. This is a benefit to everybody. So that was a part of it. One of the early things we did was actually create a petition. So in order to get this discussed in the New South Wales Parliament, if you had a petition with 10,000 signatures on it, then that would require them to actually discuss it.
Yeah.
And that's also performs an educative role. So this was before electronic petitions were allowed. So it actually had to be paper and to go around and get people to sign it. And we managed to do that. That got it into the Parliament. But we worked through one of our local home education organisations, the Home Education Association. They were fortunately willing to actually see this as an issue and to, provide us with some infrastructure resources and a name that actually made it, I think, easier for politicians to listen to us. And we did things like, at the time they were having what they called community cabinets. So the cabinet was going around to different parts in the state and having meetings and talking to local community members. And we just made sure that at every single one of those meetings, there was somebody from the community there who would put up their hand and ask the question and say, will the Minister for Education meet with the Home Education Association? And eventually the Premier said, just I'm sick of being asked this question. Can you actually meet with them, please, and get rid of them?
So numbers and so educating people about how it was going to affect
Yes.
them, gathering the numbers, and then being relentless in repeating a very simple message was really key with you.
A simple message, but I mean, I'm sure it was the same in Queensland. There was also a certain amount of education and empowerment that was involved, because people had they didn't even necessarily know who their local MP was. They'd never talked to them before. They'd never met with them before. And so having, actually helping people to know what they could do.
Yeah.
So they felt that they could do something, making it easy for them to actually do it. That was really important.
Cool. Patricia, was there anything significantly different with your campaign? I know that one of the aspects of your campaign was holding off until the right time came so that you could come out all guns blazing. So do you want to?
So I think a lot of ours was done in a very opposite way to what Karleen's just described. So so we had been building and solidifying that community and that support for everyone through a number of processes and trying to have a main space where our state's homeschoolers could be. And then keeping them informed. So when the first stuff came out 2 years ago, we made sure that we tried to deliver it in a way that everyone could understand. We put in suggested answers to things, and we were just like, if you can't think of it yourself, write in this and then drop in your own little section and explanation of how it affects you. So then we kind of took that same angle this time as well. We didn't really have a name behind us. So that first day that it got dropped, Amanda and I are sitting there together and we're like, we need something that we can hashtag that's going to go viral. And we came up with Free to Homeschool. So that just kind of happened on that day. And then from there, we basically broke it down and we're like, right, what is the most important thing we need right in this moment? What is the first thing we need to do? And the first thing was hitting social media, throwing that Free to Homeschool tag on all their stuff and educating them on how this was going to affect us. So everyone was putting up saying, how the curriculum would be limiting our children because right now we use more than what the curriculum offers, and just showing and breaking down each part. So in our group, we kind of had examples as well, and we broke down the bill and dissected all the parts that affected us and put it into a document that we could then show how it's going to affect. What is the old stuff? What is the new stuff? How does it compare? Just making sure everyone was aware and everyone was informed. We didn't have too many that took that angle of, oh, well, I don't care because it's fine for me. There was very, very, very few that did that. I think I could identify maybe 3 people.
Yeah. So
through that whole thing.
There's a couple of things that I'm getting from this. I think in Karleen's instance, if we were now doing what you did, that social media push and the hashtags would be something that you'd probably use in a campaign right now.
Well, we did use social media. We didn't use hashtags.
Yeah, but things have kind of moved on, haven't they?
Well,
Things have progressed. 10 years, it's a long time.
Yeah, that's right. And there's more social media.
Yeah, there is that. And the other thing that I'm getting from both of you actually is the power of storytelling and narrative. So for example, you were using examples to personalize things for people so that they could identify, they could sympathize, they could possibly even empathize with situations that they would come across. And in Karleen's case, the people were out there as well telling their stories as well. So all this storytelling, you make it personal for the politicians, because politicians deal with briefing papers and numbers and statistics, and when they have to confront actual people, especially en masse, who are going to be affected by something, I mean, in some cases, like in what happened in your case, it was like, look, let's just deal with this because you're being a pain in the butt now. But also there is the case of lots of people coming along and saying, this is not working for me, and if politicians are actually doing their job, then you would hope that they would look at the effect on their population that they are there to serve and would go, oh right, okay, maybe we need to rethink this. I mean, in some ways the threat of it being a disaster for them politically is also a motivation. If you do this, you ain't getting in next time, or your name will be mud. It is as much a motivation for some types of politicians as would you please serve your people.
When
I think
one of the things,
in our case, I think that what was really good is we actually had a lot of support and guidance from some of the politicians. So they were giving us tips on the side as well. And we were actually told, because the first thing that we took was the submissions were being open to go to the committee for the committee to review it all.
Okay.
So that was one of our main angles first up. And we were told that if they didn't have a personal story attached, they would actually be overlooked and may not even make it through to submission. So that was a key point that we were told. And in doing that, to help people out, because a lot of them felt too overwhelmed, and us providing those examples, we actually used the comments that they had made on social media and then used AI to help create it into a submission. And then they just had to do some simple editing. So we used that angle, and it provided them with like the skeleton and the bones of it. And all they had to do was just beef it up.
that's incredible.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. We've
That-
got
Yep. So we basically broke down all the tasks, because I'm really good at the legislation. So I helped with a lot of the breaking down and the understanding of that. Amanda did all that AI stuff and helped to coordinate sort of the examples and the templates for that. And then we had so many other people on board that we were able to provide tasks that we needed done, but we literally didn't even have time to get to. So we were just so swamped and overwhelmed with all the tasks that we had on our plate that we were trying to make lists. And when we would notice someone in the group with particular skills, or if someone offered to help, we would kind of tee them up with the jobs that we needed done that we just did not have the time or capacity for.
okay, Karleen.
I was just going to say, one of the things that we did when we were doing what we were doing with our advocacy was actually look back at Hansard to see what had happened previously.
Yes.
And and it was really interesting to see, even when the Education Act, our Act in New South Wales was enacted in 1990, so a long time ago. And that was the first bit of legislation that actually put home education into the law in the state. What we could see in the discussions in Parliament, there were a lot of people that were actually very unhappy. Home education had actually been put with equal status with government schooling and non-government schooling. People didn't like that. Some people didn't like that at all. But what you did hear from was the politicians who had home educators come and talk to them. And they would talk, somebody would say something bad about home educators, and they'd pop up and say, but I had this family come and see me, and I know them, and they do a great job. And there was one MP who'd been home educated himself because he lived way out in the bush and school really wasn't an option. And he was almost like he was affronted, like, are you saying that, my education was deficient? So those, I think that those relationships between home educators and their elected representatives are extremely important. And if you're able to go and see them, if they meet your children, they know, they have more confidence in actually talking about it, because a lot of them don't necessarily know anything. And when they actually do know somebody, then they do feel like they're not going to be taken in by the stuff saying, these are all crazy people who are neglecting their children and not providing good education. They know otherwise. And so those relationships at all times, I think, are valuable. They're a really protective measure for home educators.
So in England, we're facing a couple of things at the moment. We're facing a change in guidance, which I'm not looking forward to, because well, a number of us don't consider the last guidance to be legal anyway. They've pushed the envelope with so many things. It's the mission creep stuff, but also we've got this bill being promised by our new government, because we had an election in July and changed regime, and they've got this children wellbeing bill coming in that we're not quite sure what's going to be in it, but given Labour's history over the last 3 or 4 decades, it will be a kind of let's sweep all children up and look after them, and you know, we're expecting some pretty intrusive stuff, some stuff where they're bending the rules of data protection, where they are wanting to produce a register of children not in school, not a register of home educators, a register of children not in school, which includes absolutely every child who is not registered at a school. It's stuff like that, you know, we've got it coming from all sides at the minute. And we really do have the fight for our life. We've also got, added to that, we've also got now more than 50% of new to home educators are not doing it because they've decided from the get-go and it's just a continuation of parenting, or even that they've tried school and they think that maybe I can do a bit better. A lot of them are doing it as a result of school having not met the needs of their children, or indeed having damaged their children. So we've got a lot of extremely already stressed out parents out there who are trying to do the best for their children, thousands and tens of thousands of them. So it's a lot harder to grasp the motivations of those people, to sort of piggyback onto the motivations of those people and get them to act, because they're already fighting for their lives out there and the lives of their children. So really, I was going to ask if either of you had any hints or advice, and then we'll wrap this up because I don't want to make it too long.
I think the main view and angle that we took with ours was to fight the bill, not fight the people, not fight the parties. So we always made sure that we were fighting the bill, and so that we could get all the members on side. So we ended up getting good word and, you know, having connections with every party in a positive way, because we were fighting that bill, not fighting them, not pitching them against each other, even though some of them did try and use us for that. We pulled them up on it, but yeah, we made sure it was to the bill and why it was wrong, rather than who was doing it.
Yeah, not keeping it not personal, really, and not attacking politicians personally for their views, which
Or
may have,
even the parties.
well, yeah, and all their views may have come about for very good reasons. They may truly believe that because of the information they've been given, and it was your opportunity to change their minds.
Well, we found out that it was actually the department that had put this bill together. It wasn't the government level. So because it was the department level that had put this through, our job was then educating the government. What is homeschooling? How is this going to affect us negatively? And what do we really need?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Patricia said, but what they were able to achieve in Queensland was absolutely remarkable. Queensland only has one house. It doesn't have a house of review, which means a bill, if it gets through the House of Representatives, effectively, I don't know what it's called in Queensland, it then goes to a committee and they take submissions, and the committee writes a report and makes recommendations. Virtually nothing ever gets changed at committee. Essentially, the government has got free rein and they run with it. So actually getting this withdrawn was absolutely
Amazing.
an incredible thing. But I would agree with what Patricia said in terms of you work with whoever is happy to help in the parliament, go with them. And so, we got help from an unexpected source, but who actually turned out to be absolutely fabulous, so supportive and helpful, and really did want to understand and get around the issue. And we ended up having an inquiry, and we did get some significant improvement. It was extremely helpful. So yeah, so I would agree, working with whoever. But when you talk about the parents who are really struggling and they're traumatized and they're still recovering, I mean, you can't ask too much from them. You can support them, And some of what we did was we would take their experiences and their stories, and then we use them with their permission, of course, and with them being anonymized, so that then their experiences would make it to the ears of the decision makers, but knowing that they weren't actually able to do that themselves.
But really, we've been hearing about how it's really important to not make things personal when you're dealing with politicians. We've been hearing about how, you know, rally your troops, educate the people it's going to affect first. Once you've educated the people that whatever legislative change or whatever change it is that you're fighting, once they are educated, then you have to go and educate the politicians. Find some friends amongst the politicians, try and find some champions, use personal stories, whether they're your personal stories or somebody else's personal stories, to put the meat on the bones, to colour the picture, so that everybody understands and that they can relate to it, you know, and understand how your legislative process works in order that you can use it to your advantage. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but we're all supposed to be able to use our legislative process to our advantage, because that's the whole point, is that it's supposed to be there to help us, not crush us. Yeah, so Patricia,
and support people.
Support
people to engage with that process, because they do need support.
Yeah, support the people that are helping you to run this campaign. So Patricia, have you got any other words? And then we'll.
So I was just going to say, with the submissions, so for the people that we had that were struggling and not able to do it themselves, not only did we do templates for them to use, but I actually submitted, I think, nearly 40 total. And I didn't de-identify them. I put it in their names. And I would actually take phone calls or meet with people in our group meets locally. And I was typing up their story for them as they spoke. So I would just throw them questions and I would just type it all up in a template that I'd pre-made. If you go through the submissions, you'll see the ones that have a particular, you know, introductory and a particular ending, and their different stories in the middle. They were mine that I was actually typing up for them. And I submitted them on their behalf and just got in as many as we could, because that was also part of what made them rethink it, because they were just so overwhelmed with how many people had come out of the woodworks when we had been such a quiet group before.
Well, I'm gonna bring this to a close. I wanna thank you all very, very much for your input. I'm sorry it was such short notice. You know, Karleen was like, "Come on, let's go." No, she didn't resist at all. Seriously. So I'm gonna bring this to a close. So thank you everybody for listening. And we'll see you on the next one. Okay.